Have you ever sat in a movie theater just completely surrounded by the sound and thought, man, why can't I get this feeling at home? Well, today we're gonna pull back the curtain on a pretty big industry secret. It's a totally new way of thinking about audio that takes a simple stereo soundtrack and turns it into a genuinely immersive spatial experience. Let's dive in.
Right? It's a feeling we've all had. You can have a fantastic home theater, some incredible headphones, but the movie theater, it's just on another level. It feels bigger, wider, like it's wrapping around you. And it's not just about cranking up the volume. There is a fundamental reason for this difference, and honestly, understanding it is the key to unlocking what cinema sound is really all about.
All right, so here's the game plan. First, we'll look at the core problem. Then we'll see why the old ways of doing things just didn't work. After that, we'll introduce this kind of radical new philosophy, break down exactly how it works its magic, and finally, talk about the incredible payoff for you, the audience.
So let's kick things off with the basic conflict, because it turns out the audio format that we all know and love, good old stereo, it was never ever designed for the massive space of a movie theater. They just don't speak the same language.
I mean, think about it. Stereo sound is built for you, sitting in that sweet spot right between two speakers. It creates this perfect little sound image right in front of you. But what happens when you take that and put it in a giant cinema with speakers literally everywhere? Well, if you just make it louder and blast it from all channels, you get a confusing, muddy mess. You end up sacrificing the actual experience just to preserve the original mix. For years, the solution engineers tried was something called upmixing, basically stretching a stereo track to fit more speakers. But the whole philosophy behind it was flawed right from the get-go. So let's dig into why that whole bigger stereo idea was, well, a total dead end. Okay, so the old school of thought was all about this idea of stereo preservation. The main goal was that you could take a stereo track, spread it across a bunch of speakers, but, and this was the important part, you had to be able to perfectly reverse the process and get the exact original stereo track back. It's a technical test called nulling. And it sounds logical, right? You want to be faithful to the source. But here's the problem. It's a purely technical goal. It has nothing to do with how we as humans actually experience sound in a big room. And here's where that old approach really falls apart. See, it can't separate the identity of a sound, like a single footstep, from the space it's happening in, like the echo of the room. It just mushes them together and sends them to the same speakers, which is just not how we hear things in the real world. This creates this vague, confusing soundscape where you can't quite place anything, and the whole illusion of reality is just shattered. This slide just lays it all out perfectly. You've got these two competing philosophies. On the left, the old way. The goal is technical preservation, and success is measured by a computer test. But on the right, you have the new way. The goal is spatial translation. It's about translating the feeling of the original sound into this big, new space. And its success metric? It's completely irrelevant if it nulls back. The only question that matters is, does it feel real to you? It's a huge shift from technical purity to what actually sounds real. And this, right here, is the breakthrough. It's a complete paradigm shift that basically required sound designers to throw out their old rulebook and embrace a powerful and honestly much more intuitive idea. This is the aha moment. Stereo isn't some sacred final product that you can't touch. No, it's the raw material. It's the block of marble you're gonna use to carve a spatial sculpture. And once you really accept that, all those old rules about having to preserve the original stereo file, they just go out the window. You're free to create something truly immersive. I mean, this is such a powerful way to think about it. When you're standing in a huge concert hall, the sound you hear is incredibly complex, right? It's coming at you from every single direction. You could never capture all of that with just two microphones and have it be a perfect representation. It doesn't null back to stereo because it was never stereo to begin with. And yet, it sounds absolutely perfectly real. And that realism, that's the new goal. Okay, so if the goal isn't to preserve stereo anymore, what are we doing instead? Well, we're deconstructing it. We're literally taking the stereo signal apart, piece by piece, based on how our brains are wired to perceive sound. So here's how it works. First, the signal gets split into direct sound and diffuse sound. The easiest way to think about it is direct is the what, the clear, distinct source, like a voice. And diffuse is the where, that sense of the room and the environment. Then each of those gets split again, separating the centered mid info from the wide side info.
What we end up with are 4 distinct perceptual ingredients to build our immersive soundscape.
All right, first up is the direct mid. This is the core of a sound. It's the punch, the impact, the dialogue, the real important stuff. To give it maximum clarity and focus, this signal gets sent straight to the center speaker, anchoring the whole experience right there in front of you.
Now, this is where it gets really, really clever. The direct sides, this is all the information about things moving from left to right, like a car panning across the screen. This gets sent to the back speakers. I know, it sounds totally wrong, but in a big room, what this does is create a true sense of width that feels like it stretches way beyond the screen itself. That car doesn't just sound like it's moving on screen, it feels like it's moving across the entire room you're in. Next up, the diffuse mid. Think of this as the bloom of a space. You know, the presence and early reflections of a giant hall. This gets sent up to the top front wide speakers. It adds this incredible sense of vertical scale and depth, making the world feel huge without ever being distracting or making you look up at the ceiling. And finally, we have the diffuse sides. This component is pure atmosphere. It's the late reflections, the ambience that wraps all the way around you. This signal goes to the back wide speakers, and its only job is to complete that feeling of being totally and utterly immersed inside the environment. So here it is, the whole system in a nutshell. Each of our 4 components has a very specific job to do, and each one is sent to the perfect spot in the auditorium to do that job best. It's just a really elegant system where everything has its place, and it's all designed around the way we actually hear the world. So, we get to the most important part. What does all this technical stuff actually mean for you, sitting there in the audience with your popcorn? What's the real payoff?
Well, the result is a sound that feels physically massive and wide, but at the same time, it keeps all the punch and clarity of the original mix. The sense of space expands all around you, but it never distracts you. And here's the real magic trick. The sound system itself just disappears. You stop being aware that you're hearing speakers. You're just hearing the world of the movie, and that lets you get completely lost in the story. This quote just nails it. We're not just adding more speakers to make a kind of stereo plus. No way. This is a fundamental translation. We're taking the language of stereo and re-speaking it in the native language of a 3-dimensional immersive space. So the next time you're settling into your seat at the movie theater, I want you to try something. Don't just listen to the explosions and the dialogue. Listen for how the technology, the speakers, the whole system just seems to melt away, leaving you with nothing but the world on screen. I guess my question is, will you listen for the sound that disappears?